DC Comics is home to a lot of smart people, both fictional and otherwise. Whether it's the heroes of the DC universe who reside on the page, or the creators who bring life to them off it, comic book fans have had the privilege of enjoying some of the smartest moments in the medium when reading a DC comic. I'm Ewan, this is What Culture Comics, and here are the 10 smartest decisions in DC hero history. Number 10. Changing the Green Lanterns. It's been said many times that Green Lantern is essentially DC Star Wars, and in terms of scale and just overall sci-fi goodness, the comparison rings true. It doesn't have quite the mythological splendor of George Lucas's space opera, but there's nothing else in the superhero genre that comes as close to it as Green Lantern. Interestingly though, Green Lantern didn't start off as the sci-fi epic we know it as today. The original incarnation of the comic, which began in the 1940s, focused on Alan Scott, a Green Lantern who derived his powers from magic. It wasn't until the Silver Age commenced in the following decade that Hal Jordan would be introduced, and with it the sci-fi focus that has stuck with the comic ever since. But that wasn't the only home run GL managed to hit in the decades following Alan Scott's debut. As the years progressed, DC introduced a number of different Green Lanterns to compete with Hal Jordan, each bringing their own personality to the comic. Today, every DC reader has a lantern they love the most. It's pretty much generational, and even though the Silver Age nostalgia goggles have prevented newer lanterns from making the mark they probably should have, it hopefully won't be long until Simon Baz, Jessica Cruz, and Joe Mullane become just as iconic as their predecessors. Number 9. Superman smashes the Klan. The Adventures of Superman. Okay, so there are actually two really smart decisions at play here. The first is the original radio serial, The Adventures of Superman, exposing the rituals of the KKK and thereby contributing to the group's decline post the Second World War. The second one is the decision to give Jean Luen Yang and Guri Huru the opportunity to tell their own Superman vs. the Klan story in the aptly titled Superman Smashes the Klan. Because it's great and you should all go read it. The latter is of course inspired by the former though, which saw the Man of Steel expose the KKK while the group was in the midst of yet another resurgence. The story goes that a young author and activist called Stetson Kennedy took it upon himself to investigate the Klan during World War II, infiltrating their meetings in the hope any information he gathered and relayed to the authorities and press would help dismantle the organization. Arguably more brilliant though was Kennedy's decision to approach the writers of The Adventures of Superman in the hope that they too could put his findings to good use. And surprisingly, they did. In a 16-part series titled Clan of the Fiery Cross, the last son of Krypton turned his focus towards the Klan and revealed the group's intricacies to listeners. Important note here because it would be disingenuous to claim that Superman actively instigated the decline of the Klan as a mainstream political force in the United States during the 1940s, but discrediting them in such a fashion is sure to have had some influence. Number 8. Ollie asks the Shade to destroy his personal effects. Archer's Quest. The Archer's Quest is my favorite Green Arrow book for a host of different reasons, and you can actually watch a full in-depth editorial on the book on the channel by clicking somewhere here, hopefully. First of all, you have Phil Hester and Andy Parks' gorgeous artwork, but when you factor in Brad Meltzer's sincere approach to the well-worn comic book trope of death and resurrection, exploring how a character would navigate their own return were they to ever actually shift off the mortal coil, you have one of the character's finest ever stories. He's one of the publisher's most storied characters, and having undergone several different transformations since the creation of the DC universe, there's more cause for him than any other character to take a trip back through memory lane, which is what Archer's Quest essentially does. The main draw is Meltzer's sincere approach to the resurrection trope though, and it conjures an interesting revelation for Ollie. The book reveals how, in the event of his death, Queen had tasked known supervillain The Shade with destroying his personal items and memorabilia, lest one of his enemies use them against his loved ones. Shade isn't as successful as GA would have hoped, forcing him to track down the remaining pieces of his past himself, but it's an important quest all the same. Villains have previously used memorabilia to hurt heroes where it matters most, something Dick Grayson found out the hard way during Scott Snyder and Jock's phenomenal Batman: The Black Mirror. Number 7. Barbara Gordon becomes Oracle. Suicide Squad. The Killing Joke is in many ways essential reading for Batman fans, but there's also no ignoring the overall tackiness of the story. For as much as Alan Moore and Brian Boland were able to provide the definitive multiple-choice origin story for the Clown Prince of Crime, as well as distill the essence of the character's relationship with Batman, the comic itself is also dripping in misogyny. There's just no other way around it. Barbara Gordon, the first Batgirl, was used as little more than a device to showcase the Joker's wanton cruelty. Moore has even gone on record to say that editor Len Wein, when signing off on Moore's plans to maim Batgirl, told him to, quote, cripple the bitch. Yikes. Moore has all but since disavowed the Killing Joke, despite its other successes, but it thankfully didn't spell the end for Babs. The character found new life in John Ostrander and Kim Yale's Suicide Squad comic, with the latter frustrated by her fate in the Killing Joke. Rather than have Babs return with the full function of her legs, however, the pair decided to take the character's fate in the Killing Joke and give readers a disabled hero in Oracle. Starting with Suicide Squad number 23, Babs became the information broker known as Oracle, and assisted DC's heroes in fighting crime. She would later found the Birds of Prey, ensuring Yale and Ostrander's decision would remain one of DC's absolute best. Number 6. Rebooting Superman, John Byrne's Man of Steel. One thing that those not among the comics faithful may not realize is that many of the depictions of comic book characters we would consider most definitive are not actually the originals. While Bob Kane and Bill Finger's formula for Batman was successful, it wasn't until Dennis O'Neil, Neil Adams, Steve Englehart, and Marshall Rogers, plus others, came along in the 1970s that many of the characters' most defining aspects were introduced. The same goes for Marvel's X-Men, with the original Stan Lee, Jack Kirby comics lacking many of the characters and elements that would turn the mutants into a global powerhouse. No, Marvel would have to wait for the creative duo of Chris Claremont and John Byrne in order for that to happen. And speaking of Byrne, it's also largely him who we have to thank for the definitive incarnation of Superman, along with the likes of Richard Donner and Christopher Reeve, whose 1978 portrayal so effortlessly captured the warmth and majesty of the character. But back to the comics, and Byrne's work on Supes came in the wake of 1985's Crisis on Infinite Earths, which rebooted the then ludicrously convoluted DC multiverse in order to create one streamlined continuity. A number of changes were implemented, but the Man of Steel saw the biggest focus, with the reboot having been implemented in part due to the character's near unending array of superpowers, as well as his convoluted backstory and supporting cast. Byrne managed to deftly distill the character's history into the new continuity, and in turn redefine several aspects of Supes mythology. Later creators would roll back some of his changes, but in the decades since, no one has quite managed to leave as big an imprint on the character as he. Number 5. Dick Grayson becomes Nightwing, Teen Titans. There are a few characters as unique in comics as Dick Grayson. Because of the sliding timelines present in both the Marvel and DC universes, it's rare that readers ever get to see a character age and develop. That isn't the case with the first Robin though, as readers have seen Dick develop from a young crime-fighting prodigy into a hero in his own right. Today, Grayson has his own identity separate to that of the Bat family as Nightwing. Initially, it was revealed how Dick had coined the Nightwing identity just to change things up at the Teen Titans, but the post-Crisis origin, provided in Batman number 408, which I'm lucky enough to own, added some much-needed tension by revealing Bruce fired Dick as Robin after he was shot by the Joker. Arguably no other character in Batman's library has received as much development as Grayson, who has only gone from strength to strength since leaving his mentor behind. Number 4. Martian Manhunter finds the goodness inside Faraday, New Frontier. Darwin Cook's The New Frontier is a celebration of the golden and silver ages of DC Comics. What Cook does so cleverly is that he captures the charm and optimism of the medium in that era, and then grounds it in the real historical context of the time. Superman reckons with his role as an American symbol as the Cold War escalates, while Batman negotiates how his own image could scare those he wishes to protect, thus providing a narrative reason for his shift from the Golden Age badass of the 1940s to the more kid-friendly and outward-looking character seen in the 50s and 60s. It is so clever, but arguably the focal point of the book is Martian Manhunter. Cook retells the character's origins in The New Frontier and lays its most decisive moment at the character's feet. After deciding to leave the Earth, having witnessed so much cruelty in the short time he's been there, Jean is captured by King Faraday, a government spook. In this incarnation, Faraday is typical of the reactionary Red Scare G-Man, but he comes to bond with Manhunter, who in turn looks into Faraday's mind and sees that he believes in a world where his methods one day won't be necessary. This provides the impetus for the pair to work together against the Center and to unite the world's heroes along the way. Just brilliant. Number 3. Showing a different side of Gotham. Gotham Central. Ignoring for just 1 second that maybe DC shouldn't have so many Bat books on the shelves at a given moment, one spin-off book that definitely justified its existence was Gotham Central, a project co-authored by Ed Brubaker and Greg Rucka in the early aughts that focused on the GCPD. Brubaker and Rucka, joined by artists Michael Lark, Stefano Gordiano, and others, drew inspiration from homicide life on the street, and invited readers to experience Gotham from a new perspective. It was street level, on the ground, and showcased how Gotham's ordinary cops do their jobs when they have to face supervillains like Mr. Freeze, Two-Face, and Joker, all with the Dark Knight operating outside their authority and creating all kinds of internal conflict. Look, Gotham Central is a truly extraordinary book, with arguably its crowning achievement being the Half-a-Life arc, but the true genius of the comic lies in its ground-up approach to the DCU, spotlighting the ordinary dealing with the extraordinary. Number 2. Everything is canon. Grant Morrison's Batman. I know this list has had a lot of Batman, but just hear me out, okay? I like me some Batman. Not too much Batman, but just the right amount of Batman. As a treat. And in my mind, just the right amount of Batman is Grant Morrison's Batman, which kicked off in 2006 and concluded without the fanfare it deserved in 2013. The writer restored Bruce Wayne to, in their own words, the hairy-chested love god seen in the O'Neil Adams run of the 1970s, but with one important distinction: everything was canon. Morrison's love of comics developed pre-Crisis during the Silver Age, and so it's no surprise that a lot of those elements ended up playing into their run on the Caped Crusader, most noticeably in Batman R.I.P., which reimagined the Batman of Zur-Anah as a fail-safe backup personality locked in Bruce's subconscious, something he could revert to in the event he was ever placed under intense psychological attack. Morrison's Bats kicked off what would eventually prove to be one of the character's most creative periods ever, again did a video on that as well, introducing Bruce Wayne's childhood Talia al Ghul, Damian Wayne, and then Batman Reborn following Bruce's death at the hands of Darkseid in Final Crisis. And number 1. Tim Drake searches for the truth. Red Robin. Speaking of Batman Reborn, not nearly enough attention is given to Red Robin, one of the more overlooked books to emerge from the event, which focused on Tim Drake in a new identity, refusing to accept that Bruce Wayne actually died and trying to solve the mystery of his mentor's true fate. Written by Christopher Yost and then later Fabian Nicieza, Red Robin reiterated Drake's position as arguably the smartest of the Dark Knight's sidekicks, and went to great lengths to illustrate his resourcefulness as a crime fighter. During the series, Tim was able to outfox the League of Assassins and figure out what became of Bruce, deducing that he had really been displaced through time and not killed. This earned him a big old hug from Bruce when he did eventually return, and truth be told, given Tim was the only one who thought Bruce had survived, the former Robin had more than earned it. And those were just 10 of the smartest decisions in DC hero history. What do you think are the smartest choices DC has made? Let me know in the comments below, like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss another upload going forward. I've been Ewan, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Bye!